Hi, y'all. This is Kristen Chenoweth.
Hi, I'm Gloria Stefan.
This is Sarah Bareilles.
Hi, I'm Patti LuPone.
This is Lin-Manuel Miranda. You're listening to the Broadway Podcast Network.
Here you go. 1, 2, 3.
Welcome to the Theater Podcast, intimate personal conversations with theater's biggest talents. I'm your host, Alan Seals. Today we have Olivier Award-winning American stage, TV, and film actor Andy Karl. Welcome on the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me. This is going to be a lot of fun.
So I guess we can start with right now. You're currently starring in Pretty Woman the musical, but I want to back up a little bit and kind of get to your origins. So you moved to New York City at a very young age, right?
Yeah, very young. I would say I was 20, 19 going on 20, and I moved up with all the hopes and dreams of auditioning in New York City. I had a friend who had already lived up here, and I just slept on the couch for a little while and auditioned and started ending up doing shows out of town, out of New York, which is, you look at Backstage Magazine, it's very nice now, the Backstage magazines of today. Back then, they were just all paper. Now they're sort of like glossy magazine sort of covers and all that kind of stuff. I was on the cover of Backstage magazine for Rocky, so it's nice now.
It's all come full circle.
Back then, it was a little like you get the ink on your hands.
So what made you want to come to New York in the first place?
Well, I was pursuing musical theater. Pretty much. I'm from Baltimore. I come from a very, my mother plays organ for her church. There's always music around. So I was always musically inclined that way. Studied music, found out that I could sing a little, and I enjoyed theater. I started doing theater in high school. Caught the bug there, started doing dinner theaters around town in Baltimore, ended up doing Toby's Dinner Theater, which is in Columbia, Maryland, which is still a very prestigious dinner theater there. And it's 8 shows a week. It's very much like the same schedule of a Broadway show, except you can also wait tables and make a few bucks. And then I was, I think around 20, I was like, you know what? I just need to do it. Need to challenge myself, and moved up here, and I'm going to say success happened because I got my first job right away, being in the chorus of some show in Akron, Ohio, at another dinner theater. But to me, that was pure success.
Was that your first equity role? Or?
I was doing non-equity. They would hire non-equity actors for the chorus of some shows, and then they would have one or two principal actors who would be equity. And I'm not sure if that still happens. I'm sure it must.
Oh yeah.
But I was cutting my teeth. I was learning and watching, these equity actors do their thing, and I was so inspired by that, and it just kept me going, kept me involved, and I had this family of theater folk that I was becoming familiar with, and but New York was a place where it's happening, and it's all very big when you're first moving here. It's very fast, and you just want to be involved. Now it's sort of like I've done, I think, 13 Broadway shows now, and it's, when I look back and think of that, it's kind of astounding that I can say that, because I still remember moving to New York my first day and looking at it with newborn eyes.
Right. So how I guess how long did it take before you landed your first big role, and were you having to do that struggling actors to stereotypical thing where you were waiting tables in between, or?
Yeah, I mean, look, when I was in Baltimore, I was working at Toby's Dinner Theater, which was about 45 minutes a drive away from my house where I was at my apartment in downtown Baltimore, and parking was terrible in right around where my apartment was. So I would actually sleep in my car in the parking lot of Toby's Dinner Theater every now and again, because I'd have to come back for a matinee and I didn't feel like making the trek.
Wow.
So for me, I'm like, work was work, man. I'm getting paid to, jump around and sing and, make people laugh, make people smile. And I was young enough and, naive enough to be like, this is exactly what I want to do. So struggles, I didn't think of that as struggling back then. I was like, I'm living the dream. Sleeping in my car, having Burger King, and I get to go into this theater every day and do what I love to do. Struggles to me were not about like, oh my next job, I don't know what's going to be. It's always just about negotiating all of that and making it, what's the next step? Make it happen, do it, and see what happens.
So then I guess, with the big breakout role, would you call Kyle the UPS guy in Legally
Sure.
Blonde?
Yeah, we can start there. But I think before that I think what really put me in the New York map was Altar Boys. It was
Right, off Broadway.
this off-Broadway show, and it was, this great group of guys doing this, faux Christian boy band, but the lyrics were very funny. It was a hilarious show, and it required us to all be sort of like boy band, members. And I was Luke, the sort of thuggish Christian boy band member. So it became this sort of off-Broadway hit. And Jerry Mitchell saw me do it, and then then the UPS role came right along.
Wow. And then you did a long stint in Jersey Boys off and on. You did a couple of those?
Yeah. I was in Jersey Boys, but which was a great show, by the way, for an actor, and anybody who's been in it, I think, agrees that the script of Jersey Boys is actually it's meant to be well acted, and it's written very well. Rick Ellis wrote the screenplay, I guess you'd call it, for Jersey Boys, and it was my first time, like, sort of big role monologuing to the audience, and I was number one right off the bat. I was Tommy DeVito coming out and giving this big speech about how we made it as Jersey Boys, and at first it was daunting because you have to get the audience to love you, but it didn't take me any time to sort of wrap my head around it. It was like, this is tremendous. This is a well-written script. This is what acting is. This is what ping-ponging with other actors on stage is. This is about collaboration and about making people happy. And you value those scripts you get. I look back on that, on Jersey Boys, as I'm very fond of it because of the script and because of the role was so great, and it was, led me to be very confident in other roles that I went and did.
Do you have a specific type of role that you particularly like to do, or I guess maybe even something that you dislike doing?
Speaking of Jersey Boys, there was Tommy DeVito is, like, on paper the bad guy. He's the guy who, takes all the money that they've all made, and he's been spending it in Las Vegas and or betting on horses, and they're ending up nuts. But there's something very charming about Tommy, and he's got a sense of humor. So I really like guys you love to hate. I find those are a lot of fun. I've played many different roles, but those are always fun because you have to wink and smile and trick the audience into loving you, even though you're the bad guy.
It's kind of like Phil Connors in Groundhog Day too.
Yeah.
That obviously we want to hate him, and then you make it such a lovable guy that we wanted to hate. And Groundhog Day, of course, you got the Olivier Award in London for that at the West End, and Tony nominations, Drama Desk nominations, Tony nominations also for Rocky the Musical and On the 20th Century. When all these nominations, all these awards started piling on, was there
I'm blushing right now.
When they did. They kind of all came, together. It seems a little bit in a certain point in your career. Did things sort of take off for you in a different direction at that point, or were roles?
Yeah, look, I can't. Once you stick around long enough in New York, you start to know people, and people start calling you up. I think, if anybody wants to, like, stick around long enough, you go, oh, that guy who does that thing. I happen to be one of them, and then I was put into another spot, which gave me a little bit more notoriety, and so on and so on. And I try not to suck at whatever I'm doing, which, if you suck at it, then they don't want to talk to you. So yes, now, like, as far as Pretty Woman is concerned, Steve Kazee, who was in the run before me, couldn't do the Broadway run, Jerry Mitchell just picked up the phone and called me. We know each other. We've worked together. He trusts me with roles, and I certainly don't want to let him down. So I came in and broke down the role as far as how I would do it and make it happen. People can trust you with a certain amount of work and see what you'll do with it. So yes, very fortunate enough to now get phone calls for jobs, but I still have to audition. Like if I go to pilot season, I'm gonna bust my butt auditioning for all these other roles that are on TV but I'm sure there are plenty of people who just get phone calls in LA. I'll be one of them soon, hopefully.
Yes. How do you approach a script or a new role when something's handed to you?
Yeah, it's always different. I feel like with Pretty Woman, it was interesting because I watched the movie. Obviously, I knew the movie very well, and then you see Richard Gere just doing a lot of looks to the camera and a lot of it's mostly reactive stuff from him because Julia Roberts is doing this tremendous star turn in this movie, and her journey is right in front of you. Richard Gere's Edward Lewis's journey is not as forward thinking. It's about his thought process is changing. So how do you translate that onto theater? But how would I get into that role, and how would I be that way, and how would I be this rich guy, this mogul who has to change and become a better human being and not feel like business is everything and corporate takeovers and that kind of stuff. But initially I was like, how am I going to think of this role? I need to put on a suit. So me and Greg Barnes went shopping for some Tom Ford suits.
Oh, you actually went out and bought a suit?
We all because I knew this was going to be a huge part of this role. Like, this guy has to look like a billionaire, he's got to walk in looking like $1 million. And I've I think Ed Norton, who's another Baltimore actor, I remember an article with him. He's like, I never really fully get into a role until I'm in his shoes. And that's kind of where I was going with this. I was like, I need to put on this guy's physique and his suits and all that kind of stuff. And it was sort of like an outward in moment, because who would buy these, $5,000-$10,000 suits and these shoes and be particular about everything and also protect them and put them down in a certain way? And then it starts to feed your character. And why does he own all this stuff? Why is he after all these high end things? Why does he like the best? What's wrong with his childhood, or what was good about his childhood that makes him this type of guy? So it really began with a suit this time. It was really and it was a fun way to look at it.
That's interesting. So then how did you approach the UPS guy?
UPS guy was like, shorts, put it on, give me the shorts.
Yeah,
Let's see what happens.
Deliver packages to people.
Yeah, no, it was all swag, and it was fun because Jerry Mitchell and I back then figured out what the music would be as I enter, where would the box be. It was very taking a moment, but then it's, you got to have that swag, and translating that to other actors can be difficult sometimes. I think I know people who took over, it's just a matter of how do I do what Andy Karl just did? I was like, I don't know. I just kind of had my swag going on. You got to find your own swag. And it's got to be there, and it's got to make, you got to know who that guy is just in an entrance.
Does that translate, I guess, to the wider industry of originating a role versus I guess stepping into somebody else's shoes? When you come into a role that's already in existence, do you still approach it the same way, or is it when you're originating, obviously you do something completely different, it seems like?
I mean, I guess there's a little bit of safety net for there's the nostalgia that we're working on here with the role that already exists out there in the world. So I know the mission of the type of person that needs to be there, but I get to at least create that guy internally and externally. So, but I still have the same objective as say the movie may have had. Of course, the journey within 2.5 hours, if you tear a movie apart and put it back together as a musical, you have a lot of things that are new that audiences haven't seen. So I have different subtext that's going on, all sorts of stuff that make it completely different than the actual role that was on a movie. Like Phil Connor's, it's I knew I needed to be a jerk, how do I find that within me? I'm not particularly a jerk, at least as far as I'm concerned. Other people may think I am, but it was what is that one thing about me in my life that makes me that I can tap into, that can just I will always be there at the top of the show, can be a jerk, and then scuff that off along the way of finding like the spiritually better person by the end of the show. So it is my own journey to find out what character is like, but there is that sort of safety of know what's happening with this show. They
Right.
know what's happening with this character.
They might have heard the soundtrack a million times.
Yeah, or they've seen the movie a million times, so they're going to be, I guess, expecting a certain thing. Rocky was very different in that way, where I felt like I can't go too far away from like the voice. I can't go too far away from like I can't be like a skinny, high pitched voice guy for Rocky. It's got to be low and slow. It's got to be down here. It's got to talk all these things. He's got to. But I lived there. I like walked my dog speaking this voice. I would talk to people in this voice, and I would sort of get myself into that just who that person is, into his shoes and into his voice and into his body. So there's still a huge development of character you have to do with these roles, even though they're already out there in existence.
Right. That's interesting. So 1999, of course, Saturday Night Fever was your Broadway debut. And so you've been doing this for almost 20 years. Aside from the magazines going from print to digital, what are some of the other big things that have changed for you in the industry?
From print to digital.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. It is interesting. I mean, obviously I think it's still in flux. We're talking about like we can now do huge digital, screens on stage that are backdrops, and is that good to use for certain shows? Is there not good to use? Do you want to be more analog with some shows? So the sets are getting really complicated. I've worked like Groundhog Day was extremely complicated, even though it didn't look that way on stage. But there's 5 different rotating pieces on stage, and you'd have to step on one, and they would rotate, and there would be clockwork. It was very complicated. I don't know why Matthew Warchus would ever want to undertake, something that mathematical, but I think that's how his brain works. So the technology is pretty astounding. I also think that in my time of being on stage, and this may not be true, but musicals are self-aware now. They sort of comment on themselves.
Mhm.
They like Forbidden Broadway exists, where you can make a joke out of something that is existent, but then Forbidden Broadway can be its own show. It's commenting on show business. So I think now, as you do shows, at least in my eye, there's a certain amount of like, I'm about to do this scene from Pretty Woman, and it's commenting on the shopping scene, and it's got to be fun. Because we're commenting on a thing that already exists. So how do we make it fun for the audience? Because I sort of know what the audience is already thinking. So let's make it that way, and then let's comment on it and make it even funnier. So there's something that may have happened within my 20 years on stage, is that we're able to comment on certain styles and certain things like that and make it funny, or make us remember a certain style of musical. So yeah, maybe that's the big thing.
Do you find that the new audience, the people who have never seen a show before, is that changing at all for you with like the recent rise, I guess as recent as it is, of social media, right? So you've got your Facebooks and Twitters where everyone can take their selfies, and you have shows like Be More Chill that are coming to Broadway almost because the internet demanded it,
Right.
where otherwise it may not have had that opportunity.
Yes. This is a good question to ask my wife, because she has a big opinion on this. And yes, it's just changed in the way of like, the existence of the telephone. Now we're able to look at our phones and have more immediate information given to us. And I think producers are hip to that, and they want to use that. They want it to be a part of their message, and it reaches such a wide audience that way. What's weird about theater, or how that comes into contact with theater, is that we're very immediate, and we're in front of you, and we're portraying a show directly in front of you. So you have to be in the room and you're part of the show, as opposed to being watching it on a 2-inch screen. So the way theater works is more like an inclusive event. And then outside at the stage door, we're right there with fans. It's not like a movie you shoot, a year ahead of time, and then you go to Comic-Con, you sit behind a gate, and you have a structured thing. It's like every night we walk out, and there's fans of the show, or people who really love the show. So, and it's good to hear feedback like that, and that's wonderful. But at the same time, it's really interesting because, and I'll give you an example. Like Ken Davenport, who produced Altar Boys, he was very hip to social media, and this is like it wasn't the early part, but it was really like theater and social media were starting to really get a nice bind, and he knew it. And so he formed a group of girls who were called Altar Holics, and they were like fans. It was like it wasn't an existing; it was part of his own brain.
Yeah.
And so he got a group of girls together who would follow us to events that were around town, and that was cool. It was like, oh, this is exactly what a boy band needs. We need our bands, man. But then it became this thing of this group of girls, certain group of girls felt ownership on the show and us, and it became like if we weren't being nice to them, it was an interesting sort of litmus test of what people think when they feel like they were the first and they were ownership of this. So it became weird. It's like, so you girls are here every night, and we're saying the same 3 sentences we always say to you after the show, and like shaking your hands, taking another picture, and doing that stuff. And it's like, it was perfectly innocent, but it became a little strange. It became a little too much like they know where we are at all times, and they're going to be there at all times. And how are we going to deal with this? Okay, we'll wait till the show's over.
Interesting. So it was sort of, I guess, forced groupies. Did it become? I guess, did he accomplish what he was looking to do? And did he grow the social media presence of the show?
It certainly became big enough to make us all, sort of hit the map really well. And it's still like being played in Korea.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's like two different boy bands that A Altar Boys and B Altar Boy groups, and sometimes they like but there's like 40 of them. It's its own thing over there.
Is it in English?
I don't think so, but I'm sure like translating that with like boy band slang wasn't too fun, but who knows?
Probably not. So you got the Olivier Award. Obviously, did Groundhog stuff in London. Is the West End? Is that a different scene for an actor than the New York Broadway scene, or is theater valued or viewed differently in either place?
Theater, from what I was getting, and this just might be a guy who got there and sort of like, oh, what is this new place called London that I've never worked at before? I felt like theater was being very respected, very honored there. They do a lot of American musical theater, so there's a lot of actors with great American accents. That's like, upon that, I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. They do a lot of American musical theater over here. But speaking of social media, like I only did one interview the whole time I was over there for Groundhog Day. There was a speckling of people at the backstage, and it's not like a thing there. It's not like they're not there to like get autographs or they're there to see great shows, as far as and fans of the show are fans of the show, but they don't, there's not like a swarm of people at the stage door. And it was a huge hit there. As for the short time that it ran, it was sold out completely, and Olivier Award included. So the scene, I feel like, is like a respect for what we're all seeing, and you certainly see that in what they do on stage as well. I saw some tremendous theater there, and So I just felt more because it's, the land of Shakespeare. You feel like this is where it all started. This is kind of the beginnings of pure uh, theater, and so it just felt like that there. And when everybody was done after the show, it's like, okay, see you later. It's not Broadway's very sort of an inclusive. It's on an island. We're all like in each other's. That we're raising a lot of money for like actors funds, all that kind of stuff, which is great. But I see the same people like weaving in and out all the time. It's really interesting.
Yeah, this is a very small island for having 8 million people on it. You see the same
The West
people.
End's like, there's theaters are scattered everywhere.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So it's not a region. I mean, it is a region, I guess, within London, but it's all over the place, not like centrally located like it is here.
Yeah, I just think as far as like media and the purpose of like pushing theater there, it's getting to what America does, but it wasn't as like media savvy when I went over there. It's really interesting, and it's like it's theaters for its own sake, as opposed to theater is we got to have the big new smash hit, get it out there in like 30-second commercial, and make get the album out, make sure it's all like it takes its time and you feel it. Like Groundhog Day, we took our time putting that show together, and it ended up being beautiful and nuanced, and every little aspect was looked at. It was really kind of a great experience.
So you got to be part of, it sounds like you were part of the creative process for Groundhog Day, putting it all together. Is that normally how it works when you're originating a role? Obviously, you were saying like when you're coming in, the show's already basically like script locked, right? So things don't change. Do you like having that creative process? Does it translate into like the technical aspect too?
Yeah, certainly. I love suggesting something or coming up with a really great joke or something that they go, oh yeah, that would be funny. Like riding the bench at the end of the show of Pretty Woman with a horse on it was, not in the out of town run when I saw it. I was like, actually, it was like, what if I just rode this? So it became this like, oh, that's my moment that I shared in my 3 weeks of learning the show. That's one big physical part, but being creative, it's the best because it's sort of suited around you. They kind of find your strengths, or they, for me, I'm a guy who's like I can juggle, I can do backflips, so I can get whatever you need. What do you got? Because I got a bag of tricks that I can throw up here, and it'd be really funny if we did that there. Or I like utilizing as many like little things as I possibly can to make it more entertaining, and certainly more to what I do.
What is your strangest hidden talent? I didn't know you could juggle or do backflips.
I stopped doing backflips after the knee injury, but I can juggle. Hidden talents, I don't know. It's like every now and again, it's just stupid stuff comes out. Low voices. It all depends.
Do you have a favorite impersonation?
I mean, yeah, doing Rocky was kind of hilarious. That it was like this long, 9-month impersonation.
I feel like everybody tries to do that. It's like,
yeah, it's funny because I wanted to honor it with the sound, but I didn't want to make fun of it, which is that's riding that line of like, yo, how do I make this voice sound like authentic to me and to have emotion and love and thinking and have its own process. And so even now I can like just tap into it and it's really interesting. It wasn't just an impersonation. It was actually like an affect of my character.
Yeah, that's amazing. And then you met your wife doing shows. Yeah,
yes.
Orfe.
Yes, I did.
And that you met her in Saturday
Night Fever.
Yeah, tell me about that story.
Yeah. God, I saw the show before I got in it. Much like Pretty Woman now. And what was I doing? I had just gotten back from like the tour of Cats. I had been on the road with Cats or some sort of tour. And I determined to like stay in New York. This is it. I'm going to spend my time here. Going to go to class. I'm going to go and audition for stuff that's here in town. I'm going to try to make that next level. And I saw Saturday Night Fever, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. The choreography was amazing. And then I saw Orphe come out and sing "If I Can't Have You," which was like she does in Pretty Woman, one of the highlights of the show. You just sort of sit back in your seat, like, wow, powerful. So I was a fan first, and then I auditioned for it, got it. Then somebody who knew me, knew her, started talking about us, just like, they're really great. And like within, I think, 6 months, we were dating, and a month after that, engaged, and then a month after that, married.
Wow.
So, and now we're going on 18 years this
Yeah.
January. So, it was sort of fast and furious, but, you know, I don't know. She's like her own person, and I'm my own person, and there's such respect. Like still to this day, like I'm such a fan. I'm like, it's I could sit back and watch her do her thing, just like I was the first time I saw her. Um, and then I just got to know her as a really deep and genuine and sweet and very loyal person. So it was an easy choice for me, and I think I married up. So that's how I feel about it.
That's beautiful. Yeah, your eyes glowed in a way telling that story that you haven't that they didn't quite light up in any of the previous bit of this podcast
it's
yet.
because personal. It's like
Yeah.
it's like I don't want to divvy it down to like it's a Broadway romance, but it was more like it, it was like an exciting time to find each other. And then we end up doing more shows together. We're like, we did this, we did Legally Blonde together. We're doing Pretty Woman together. This is our third Broadway show. We've done our own concerts together. We've done some stuff regionally. Love working together. It makes it much easier on the time at home. I mean, just as far as scheduling. But it's like that respect, and we're two actors, trying to find work and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, it's like just go home and live our lives with our dogs, and this is it. This is the salad years. This is great.
Yeah.
And you just look for moments where we can like go on vacation together. And
Hmm.
but yeah, it's like, and I mean, I guess it is a professional marriage as well as a personal one. And as I go into different roles and discover something new about myself, which is really interesting, as I'm getting older, or at least finding roles that are like epic and have huge arcs. And what do these people that, I'm not Rocky, I'm not Phil Connors, I'm not Edward Lewis, but I have to discover them. I have to discover their journeys and why they went there, and what's it like to like, not have your father around, or, take over your father's business, that kind of stuff. Um, s- you know, that helps me discover more things about myself, which in turn make me more aware of how lucky I am in this universe. And certainly with something like Groundhog Day, where at the end of the show, it's just like he's gone through this journey and he's lived this loop over and over again, which is much like an actor's life, especially on theater. We're just doing the same show over and over again. What's the point? And the point is just the people around you, and the point is telling great stories and bringing people towards you, and the point is being happy with yourself. And that's when you discover I'm happy with my life. I'm happy with my wife. What new things can I see every day? And it makes it easier to understand life. And by being an actor, it's kind of interesting. It's all happened, especially in the last couple of years. It's been very much an eye opening thing for me.
So do you do specific things? I guess on your dark days, or when you don't have shows in between work, do you guys like? I guess you personally, Andy Karl, what do you do to stay grounded, to really, I guess, not burn out?
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. It's as I get older, I get like more tired of being tired. Like, oh God, it's 8 shows a week. And it's like a 1 day off a week. What do I do with it? My voice is tired. My body's tired. I've been like working all week, making sure that I entertain as best I can. So it's like my Monday's filled with like not speaking and maybe going and seeing a movie. It's pretty lame, but we went for a 1 day trip to Miami the other day. We like going down there. It's where we got married as well. And I was like, let's just do it. Let's give it a shot. Let's just go down for, Sunday night to Tuesday afternoon. And we had the best time. And I realized that if you do something new and fun and, you know, we didn't even we slept like 4 hours the entire time. It was like we had the energy to, enjoy ourselves. So it all depends on like how tired we are each week. And like this week we have to do we're singing some of the songs from the show on Monday with Bryan Adams to promote the album and promote for the Grammys. And so that's going to be fun, but it's going to be exhausting. I'm like, we have to sing the whole show again after we just sang it, all week and then go back and start the week again. So the Broadway theater life it's taxing, especially if you're doing, 8 shows a week. And if you're like one of the leads and arcing the story and telling it, and it's like, I just need a little break. So it all depends on what I'm doing in order to give me energy to go do it. So Miami is great. We'll see if that works out again.
Do you get pumped up going out to the stage door and seeing the audience reactions, or is that more of like, all right, this is what I do now, or is it I'm looking forward to this every show after every show?
It all depends on what show it is. This role is really interesting because after doing like Phil Connors, where it's like the show's all about me essentially. I'm doing every trick in the book that I have to show you that I'm telling the story and making sure that I have the arc and the journey, and it's all the whole thing is passed through the eyes of Phil Connors. This show is passed through the eyes of Vivian Ward. Her journey is relatively very important, and my job as Edward Lewis is in support of that and in finding my own little arc as well. So it's interesting dynamic to go to, and I'm not belittling it. It's just like it's supporting role as to lead role. You want people like what you've done, but like they're excited to see the woman who just had the big journey from, being a prostitute to now having her own independent means. And she sang beautiful songs. But I get all the love I possibly can from that. It's just, it's a different, like, visceral effect from people at the stage door. It's fun. It's hilarious to me. It doesn't make me sad at all. It's just like, oh, it's like, oh, of course, no, thank you so much. As opposed to people wanting to like, oh my God, come here. That was an amazing story that amazing journey. Now it's like, I see that happening with Samantha, and I'm like, because I know what that feels like. I completely understand it, but it's interesting litmus test again for me to like see this show as opposed to other shows.
Right.
But it's always good to like go out there and have people really fall in love with the show. And we had a lot of people, especially for Pretty Women, who don't see a lot of theater. It's a big title, and they're coming in to, if they're going to see a Broadway show, they want to see a big title musical like Pretty Woman. And I always like that. Like Rocky was a lot like that. Like a lot of guys came to the show had never seen a Broadway show before, and they're all, they wanted to see Rocky on Broadway, and so we had this whole different audience.
Yeah. Do you see? I guess that it would be like that. I was going to say, do you see a different type of audience per show? But I guess with Altar Boys, you're going to get a completely different crowd than your Pretty Woman. Who the people who are our age now who grew up with the movie when they were younger.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of people are repeat offenders. They go see, they see a lot of Broadway. And then there's people who just never have seen a Broadway show before. And those are always fun because it's just like, this is your first experience with theater, and you could fall in love tonight with the whole genre. And so that's important to me, to make sure that, first timers have a good evening. And they're probably blown away. We could have just done Cartwheels all night, and they'd be like, I just saw this most amazing Broadway show about cartwheels. Because I think like my first Broadway show that I saw some good ones. Like I saw Phantom the Opera. The high school, we're from Baltimore. We'd take a trip up to New York to see a show. We always saw Phantom of the Opera. And it was like, remember like little smidgens of that evening, but it was mostly the experience of being in a theater setting, dark. The seats are cool, the stage lights up, and this beautiful moment happens. And I just remember it being a really cool moment. I'm not sure if it's like if it was a terrible show. I'm sure if a young person seeing a show would be like, that was the most brilliant thing I've ever seen because it's a new experience.
Yeah, you have no comparison at that point. But yeah, I agree with you. I think it's very special. Like theater it takes you to this place where if everyone turns their cell phones off, obviously, hopefully you don't get a ring in the middle of a show to take you out of it. But it brings you to this focus where when you're watching TV, you've got other things going around. When you're walking around on the sidewalk, you're looking down at your phone or whatnot. And I love theater, and I just love being in this moment where you have sometimes thousands of people, depending on the size of the house, just going on this journey together. It's beautiful.
That's the special part of it.
Yeah.
And you're all in it together.
Mm-hmm. So just a couple questions here, and then we'll close. But
Okay.
a couple things here. I just want to know, in general, what motivates you? What gets you up in the morning?
That's the big question. I got to go all the way to the end. The beginning of like what gets me going is like coffee is a big one. That's what gets me going in the morning. It's the fact that I get to do what I love to do, especially as an actor. I used to be in awe of the fact that I would go and be at this dinner theater back in Baltimore, and I would be able to sing and jump around on stage and entertain people. That really is important to me. And I want to do it in all facets now, movies, TV. I've had the opportunity to do a couple of those things as well.
Mm-hmm.
So,
of course, Sgt Mike Dodds on Law and Order SVU.
I mean, that would get me up at 4 in the morning, because TV is a very interesting schedule. It's all scheduling. It's all like you're either getting up at 4 in the morning or you're getting up you're going to work at 6 p.m. at night. And so it's all very different. But you're finding a new experience every night.
What advice would you give to your younger self or younger people listening now, starting out on a similar path?
Yeah, just don't. I want to say don't be so hard on yourself. I'm a Virgo. I'm a musician. I become obsessive compulsive in a lot of ways about what I do. I've learned to let go of being so precise and being so hard on myself for being precise. And I'm now having a lot more fun with what I do. So being hard on yourself is a waste of time. My niece is becoming involved in theater, and she's I think 14 now, and she's studying hard. She's like going to dance class, and she just got cast to be in Legally Blonde for a production of hers. And
nice.
So she was so hard on herself about her dancing, and I used to be really hard on myself about my dancing because I wasn't technically trained until I started going to class. But I was like, look, it just can't be that hard on yourself. You have to because it's all going to go somewhere. Your journey is meant to be here in order to go to the next step. So that's the big advice. Is take it easy, man.
Yeah. So then last question. If you could only see one show for the rest of your life, but you can see it as many times as you want, what show would you see?
A theater show? Something in a theater?
Anything.
Yeah, I think the thing that I listened to the Who's Tommy on loop for like a straight 2 years because I loved it, and for a year, and I used to listen to the soundtrack, and then I moved to New York, and I got into a production of it, and I would listen to the album every day before going on stage. So the Who's Tommy was a lot of fun. I guess I'd say that, but I'd probably get really sick of it now.
So you want to go ahead and plug yourself on socials?
On socials, where am I at?
Yeah.
Andy_Karl. That's at Instagram and Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
And then AndyKarl.com.
You had Facebook.com/the Andy Karl as well.
Is that one of them?
I found it.
Somebody created something.
How does somebody make it for you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Orphe's very good at social media. She's the man.
Well, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. Of course, this is the Theater Podcast. We are at theater_podcast ourselves on Instagram and Twitter. And of course, a big thank you to our friends Jukebox the Ghost for our lovely intro and outro music. Please tell your friends about Andy. Tell your friends about Pretty Woman the Musical. Tell your friends about this podcast. Share and share and share. That's what social media is all about. So again, thank you for listening, and thank you, Andy Karl.
Thank you.
Take a deep breath, make the world a little colorful.